Yuval, welcome back to the channel. My name is David. Today we're going to be talking about the Sigma 28 to 45mm f1.8 DG/DN Art Series lens. Now this lens is incredible because it is technically the successor to the legendary 18 to 35mm f1.8 Sigma Art Series zoom lens that was made for crop sensor DSLRs about a decade ago. Now, I want to address something real quickly because I've been seeing a lot of complaints online that 28mm on full frame is not wide enough. But I'm pretty sure that if you shot anything with an 18mm lens on crop sensor and you're complaining about it not being wide enough, you actually don't know how to math. Let me explain. So an 18mm lens on a crop sensor body is effectively closer to about a 27 or a 28mm on full frame. And the way you get that number is basically you take 18mm, then you multiply either by 1.5 or 1.6, depending on the camera brand. And then that number you get, 27 or 28mm, is effectively the focal range or focal length that you would see on a full frame sensor. So 28mm is still plenty wide. Now, I understand if you're shooting a wedding and it's a tight venue, 28mm may not be necessarily wide enough. A lot of people opt for 24mm. But if that's the case, then get a 24mm lens or a 16 to 35mm, and then you're basically good. Problem solved. Modern problems require modern solutions. Now, what makes this lens very unique is that it is a zoom lens that opens up to a 1.8 aperture, which effectively means you don't have to bring a bunch of wide-angle prime lenses to shoot the event that you're going to be shooting, because this lens basically does it all. It effectively replaces a 28mm, a 35mm, a 40mm, and depending on who you ask, a 50mm prime lens. So that's about 4 lenses that this one lens can do or replace. As always, we're going to be talking about build quality, image quality, and autofocus performance, not in that particular order. So quick disclaimer, I just want to say, Sigma, thank you so much for loaning me the lens. That said, I don't get to keep the lens, no money was exchanged, and I have to send the lens back. So by the time this video goes live, I would have already returned the lens, and Sigma does not get to preview the video in any way, shape, or form, or make any adjustments or edits. I have final edit, and my thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, let's get started with the review. The Sigma 28 to 45mm f1.8 is part of Sigma's Art series of lenses, which means you're getting professional build quality. The lens is made of a mix of metal and high quality plastics. While I couldn't find anything on the website, I'm going to assume that this is made of the same thermally stable composite material as the 85mm f1.4 Art and some of their other Art lenses, which does help keep the weight down. That said, the lens is a tad on the heavier side, weighing in at 960 grams or 2.1 pounds. The lens is built around a brass lens bayonet for better mount rigidity, and it has a weather sealing gasket. Sigma does state that the lens is fully weather sealed, so you can use it in all kinds of adverse conditions. At the base of the lens, you'll find the aperture ring, which makes a satisfying click when adjusting. The lens also has a declick switch to turn off the click noise, which is great if you're adjusting the aperture when shooting video. Above that is the autofocus manual focus switch, and on the right hand side of the lens is the aperture ring lock switch. On the left and the top, you'll find the customizable control buttons, which can be reprogrammed for a variety of settings. Both the zoom and focus rings turn very smoothly and are easy to grasp thanks to the large rubber rings. I should also mention, when zooming with the lens, all of it is done internally, which means this is great if you're planning to use this lens on a gimbal, as it won't shift the balance too much. The front filter size is an 82mm, and it comes with a plastic lens hood out of the box. Overall, this lens is very well built, and it feels like a tank. Like many of Sigma's newer lenses, the 28 to 45mm uses Sigma's HLA motors for fast, quiet, and accurate autofocus. Considering how much glass is inside the lens, the autofocus performance is very impressive. I had no trouble acquiring focus in both photo and video applications. Here is some of the footage of a recent gig where I shot the entire event with the 28 to 45. As you can see, using the A7 IV, I was able to find the subject quickly and accurately focus on their eye with the eye detect autofocus feature of the camera. Sigma also claims that the internal zoom design in the lens helps suppress focus breathing throughout the zoom range. In actual use, I really didn't notice any focus breathing, However, if there was any, many of Sony's newer cameras have a breathing compensation feature, which helps remedy the issue. Overall, this lens is a fantastic performer in the autofocus department, and I gotta say, this lens is a joy to use. As with many of Sigma's Art Series lenses, they are close to optically perfect as they can get. The images that the Sigma 28 to 45mm f1.8 DG/DN Art produces are fantastic. Images are full of life with great contrast and color rendition. The lens features a total of 18 elements in 15 groups, with 3 aspherical and 5 special low dispersion elements to minimize flare and ghosting and suppress various aberrations. The 11-blade rounded diaphragm produces a large, smooth bokeh. Now, there is some barrel distortion at 28mm, which is common with wide-angle lenses. However, this is a very quick fix in Lightroom. Sigma also claims that this zoom lens optically meets or exceeds other Sigma art lenses, including some of their prime lenses. After using this lens on a variety of professional jobs, I have to agree with Sigma's claims. The 28 to 45 blew me away with its fantastic image quality, and I am so excited to see what the future holds for the Art series of lenses. And that's the review. So here are my thoughts on this lens. First and foremost, I love that this lens exists. It's awesome to finally see a true successor to the legendary 18 to 35mm lens that Sigma made over a decade ago for DSLR cameras. That said, depending on who you ask, this lens may or may not be perfect. And let me elaborate. So 45mm on, let's say, a small venue is perfect because you're able to get close to your subject. This lens thrives when you're able to get close to your subject, whether it be shooting live music, maybe you're doing an interview or on a gimbal, doing some documentary work or shooting, say, detail shots at a wedding. In those cases, this lens is gonna shine. Where you need a longer focal length, that is where you're gonna really kind of like feel the shortness of this lens. But my solution to that is just bring along something like an 85mm, which is what I did for some of the gigs I shot this lens with, or a 70-200, and you're basically covered. I personally think if you wanted a good like 2-lens setup, I would go with the 28 to 45 and then like the 85mm. I think those 2 lenses are gonna be stellar and complement each other, and you have a 1.4 and a 1.8. You're gonna be able to see in the dark, no problem. Now, in terms of the build quality and autofocus performance, I'm very impressed. It's an Art series lens. This is as close to clinically perfect as we're gonna get, and the fact that this has so much glass inside and the autofocus is super responsive is a testament to how good Sigma is getting at making these lenses. Image quality, again, superb. It's very vibrant, full of life, clinical, if you want to call it that. You're getting a lot of good stuff out of this lens. With that said, is this lens for me? Yes and no. Let me elaborate. So yes, this lens is for me because I shoot a lot in low light environments when I'm doing live music. So having a zoom that opens up to 1.8 is an amazing thing to have in my bag. The shortness is not really going to bother me because I have an 85mm and a 70-200, and I honestly think if I were to have 3 lenses in my bag, it would probably be these 3, because then that'll cover all my ranges. However, I already have a 24-70 and the 35mm 1.4, so it's kind of a hard thing for me to get rid of those lenses because yes, I do a lot of live music, but I also shoot stuff like weddings and events. And I kind of just prefer the convenience of a 24-70. And if I need something to cover my bases on the wide end, I just pop on that 35mm 1.4 when it gets a little dark and we're good to go. However, if I was rebuilding my kit, I would most likely pick the 28 to 45 1.8, have like an 85mm, so at least I have a fast prime to pair with this lens when I don't want to bring a 70-200. And then obviously the 70-200 to kind of just cover the rest of the range. And I think those 3 lenses would be phenomenal in any kit. But that said, my needs are different than your needs. At the end of the day, Sigma gave us a fantastic new tool to incorporate to any type of situation when the situation calls for it. That said, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you found it helpful and kind of gave you an idea whether or not this lens is for you, and also the kind of situations you would probably want to use this lens. Sigma, thank you again for loaning me this lens. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for taking the chance on me with loaning me this lens and just being so active in the photography and video community. I really, really appreciate it. And again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hasta luego.